Hey everyone, and Merry Christmas to all of you. I hope you're enjoying your holidays. Thankfully, 2020 is coming to an end, and next year will hopefully be better for all of us. And 2021 brings probably the most anticipated event as far as the WoW scene is concerned. I'm obviously talking about the release of Classic Burning Crusade. But there is still very little we know about Classic TBC. The next big chunk of news we will get will probably be at BlizzConline in February. And there will also be some bit of news surfacing around New Year according to Nano. But until then, those questions are still looming around. So buckle up. In this video, we're gonna talk about 6 important questions that we as a community still have about Classic TBC. Number 1. Content release schedule. Probably the most important question that remains, aside from the obvious when is TBC releasing, is how is TBC releasing? You see, back in January 2007, when Burning Crusade first launched, there was more content available at launch than people could buy through. In addition to Karazhan, Magtheridon and Gruul, SSC, Tempest Keep, and even Hyjal were all technically available from launch. Black Temple was released with the next patch, patch 2.1, and people were still stuck on KT's bugged encounter for several days when Black Temple released. Blizzard then fixed Kael'thas, and finally guilds could get attuned to Black Temple. In China, the game launched way later, in September 6, 2007. That means that Black Temple was available at launch in China, and all those previous bugged encounters like Kael'thas or Lady Vash were fixed at launch. A Chinese guild called the Seven managed to clear all the content, including Black Temple, 7 weeks after the game released for them. That's 7 weeks to clear all of SSC, Tempest Keep, Black Temple, and not even counting minor instances like Karazhan, Gruul, and Magtheridon. If people were able to do this all the way back in 2007, can you imagine how fast the content would be cleared today if TBC released with all the content available? So we just don't know yet. How will Classic TBC release? Will there be phases like we had with Classic WoW? Is the game only going to be released with Tier 4 content, aka Karazhan, Gruul, SSC, and whatnot? Or maybe even, are we gonna have a retail-like grace period where only 5-man dungeons are available for 2 weeks and then raids release? Or is Blizzard just going to stuck to a perfect recreation of the game and just have everything available at launch? We just don't know yet, and we will probably get an answer to this in BlizzConline in February. But there is a possibility that we get an answer to this in the next few weeks as well. And how they decide to handle this question will probably dictate how enjoyable Classic TBC will be for everyone playing it. But for now, let's move on to the next question. Number 2. World buffs. This one deserves a video on its own, and I will probably make one in the near future. But basically, if you haven't played Classic WoW at all and you don't know what world buffs are powerful temporary buffs that players can get right now in Classic. They are scattered around the world, and those buffs increase the output of some classes as high as 50 to 60% more in some cases. They aren't mandatory to clear the content, and they haven't been for the longest time. But now, with Naxxramas being released, clearing Nax without them is quite challenging and way more time consuming and expensive. World buffs are generally hated by the community. Some people don't mind them, me included, but most people just don't enjoy having to log off from their character for days just to keep those buffs before their next raid, and rightfully so. Now here's the catch. There is a world where world buffs are obtainable in Classic TBC. Imagine going from Dire Maul to Stormwind to STV and whatnot, and then going to Shatrat and flying to your raid. That would be complete degenerate gameplay. And here's the thing, people did that back in TBC in 2007. This is Method's world's second Lady Vash kill. And you can see on the top right that players are using world buffs to kill her. From patch 2.0 to patch 2.1, world buffs still worked against targets above level 63. And then, when patch 2.1 released, Blizzard went ahead and fixed that, making world buffs unusable against targets over level 63. Now, the question is, will Blizzard choose to go for a one-to-one recreation of the game and keep world buffs in the game until whichever phase that contains Black Temple releases, or are they going to remove world buffs from day one? To be fair, the latter option is probably what they're going to go with, but you never know. So give your opinion in the comments about this one. Do you want world buffs to be removed entirely from TBC, or do you want them to be available for the first phase of the game? Number 3. The economy. I touched on this a couple times in previous videos, but this is still a very contested topic around the community. On one hand, you have players who want gold to be completely wiped or limited to a few hundred gold when we transition to TBC. And obviously, this is assuming we get to keep our characters going into TBC, which is looking more and more like it's going to be the case. Check my last video to know why. And on the other hand, you have people who think we should get to keep our gold going into TBC, just like we could back when Vanilla transitioned into TBC. Obviously, both camps have their own selfish motives. If you haven't played Classic at all and you're a casual that has very little gold in Classic, obviously you would want to have an even playing field and have the economy completely reset so that you get a chance to compete as far as buying gear and consumables and whatnot. And if you're a hardcore player who has been farming gold for the last 2 years, you obviously don't want to see all that effort go to waste. The truth is, this decision shouldn't be made to cater to one camp or the other. This decision should be made on the basis of how bad of a level did the inflation reach in Classic WoW. Does it take significantly less time of farming to buy your epic mounts? Then there's a problem with the economy and it needs fixing somehow. Maybe increase the price of gold sinks. So instead of 5k gold, your epic flying mount would now set you off 10k gold. But I assume many players would be unhappy with this. So instead, Blizzard could go with adding new gold sinks to the game. This is just a stupid idea off the top of my head, but you could have the vendor that sells the gigantic bag in Shatrat selling a bigger size bag that would cost significantly more gold. Adding a gold sink that every player would be interested in spending their gold on, and that effectively doesn't hurt the game in any way. They did it to incentivize two-factor authentication on your account. I'm sure they could do it to fix the economy a little bit. Now obviously the thing that would have the biggest positive impact on the economy is a faster and more reliable banning of bots. But hey, that's a topic for another video. For now, let's move on. Number 4. Launch Day. How is Blizzard going to handle launch day? That's one of my biggest concerns personally. This is how Classic WoW looked at launch, with players spread across 2 factions, 6 different starting zones, and more layers that you could count. And it was still unplayable. How is the game going to be handled when all of this is going to here? Just add more layers. As I said, there was an infinite amount of layers as far as I know when Classic launched, and everyone was spread across 6 different zones in 2 continents, and the game still couldn't handle it. So I'm very skeptical on whether layering could solve anything in the scenario where everyone is put in Hellfire Peninsula. To be honest, I don't know how Blizzard could go about doing this. I know nothing about server engineering and whatnot, and other than ridiculous ideas like forcing everyone inside dungeons for a few hours, I can't see what they could do to solve this. But maybe I'm just being pessimistic and the game will be playable with enough layers. Who knows? Number 5. Battlegroups. Let's touch a bit on PvP in Classic TBC. TBC is when the arena was first introduced to the game. And back then, different servers were part of different battle groups. So for example, you had the battle group Rampage US, which contained servers like Illidan, Kel'Thas, Ravencrest, and whatnot. And if any arena team in those servers queued, they would only be matched against players on servers that belonged to the Rampage battle group. Also, back in the day, gladiator rewards were awarded to the top 0.5% of players in the ladder for any given battle group. And the actual rank 1 team would also be awarded the title for that season permanently. So if your team was top 0.5%, you would get all the rewards including the mount, but your title would only last for the next season only. Whereas if you were the actual rank 1 team of your battle group, you would get all those rewards, but your title would be permanent. But the question is, with Classic TBC releasing, will we see the introduction of battle groups again? Thing is, the answer is not as simple nowadays. There's pros and cons with having battle groups in the game. For example, having battle groups would make queues way longer, but at the same time, the queues would be more or less competitive depending on your battle group. There would also be more rank 1 teams with battle groups introduced, whereas if you don't have them, there would only be 1 to 3 teams with permanent titles across each region at the end of each season. So it will be interesting to see if we will get battle groups introduced to the game or not, and whether they are in the game or not would affect the number of players with permanent titles, the number of gladiators, and how long the queues are going to be and how competitive they are. Number 6. Stasis servers / Classic Plus. So with Classic Vanilla reaching an end now, and with Blizzard's last survey showing that our characters and servers are most likely going to be transitioned into TBC, one question that remains is the following. For players that aren't interested in Classic TBC and want to keep their current characters in Vanilla permanently, what do we do for them? Obviously, Blizzard was kinda hinting at the possibility of having fresh vanilla servers where you get to create a new character where they would possibly re-release those type of servers every couple years to cater to that demographic. But that obviously doesn't solve the issue with players that want to keep their characters that they spent so much time and effort onto, but don't want them to be forced transferred into TBC. One solution to this is Stasis servers, which are basically servers where all the content is unlocked, including nags, and where you get to copy your current character into and just get to play vanilla forever if you don't want to play TBC. I bet there's a big enough demand for this so that you could fill at least one server for each region. And then there's Classic Plus, which is basically the same thing but with new content developed by Blizzard being released in those servers. So you'd have a Crypts of Karazhan raid, for example, or a Hyjal raid. A lot of players are also interested in this. Do I think Blizzard is going to put in the effort and resources necessary to do Classic Plus? I highly doubt it. I even doubt they would give Stasis servers. But as Blizzard put it, Classic WoW is, quote, a love letter for the community. So if there's a big enough demographic of people that are really not interested in Classic TBC or anything past it, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that this could be a thing. So there you go. Those were 6 big important questions that we're still looking for answers to. And to be fair, there's way more questions than this, but this video would get too long. So there will probably be a part 2 to this video in the future. As I said at the start, we're probably going to have some news about Classic TBC in the near future, and I will definitely be covering it as soon as it drops. So to not miss it, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Whatever you do, remember to have fun. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Bye for now.